I'd got us access to about 200,000 tracks. And with that initial set of tracks, we would drop one track as like a seed track into the database. And we would just ask the AI to pull the most similar tracks based on the fingerprint. Back then, I think we had to wait a whole 30 minutes to see the results. So I think we sort of set it running and went out for lunch. And when we came back, we found that the 10 tracks that it had pulled back as a playlist were fantastic. And I was like, oh, wow, this really works. My name's Hazel Savage, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Musiio.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries who share in the critical moments of what it takes to change an industry and build and lead a team that has your back. I'm your host, Noah Lampart, and today how Hazel Savage is paving the way to automated music tagging and search through the power of AI. All this and more on Code Story. Hazel Savage is originally from Northeast England. She's played the guitar since she was 13 and started out as a self-taught player. Her first guitar was a cherry red Fender Telecaster, followed by a Fender Cyclone and a Danelectro Hodad. Recently, she started getting more into collecting, grabbing a Gibson Goddess for her collection. She used to play in an all-girl punk band in London called Ginkinta. She worked part-time at HMV, a record store, stocking shelves, putting CDs out, and gaining an understanding of the music world from the perspective of a customer. I find it interesting that she doesn't miss the physical music products. From her point of view, a large collection of CDs can weigh a lot and are hard to move across the country. After joining an incubator in Singapore, she was paired up with her now co-founder, who is deeply technical and well-versed in AI. Combined with her extensive knowledge of the music industry, they set out to change the face of music and the fingerprints found inside it. This is the creation story of Musiio.
Musiio is, I say we're an artificial intelligence company for the music industry. But for those in the know, essentially what we are is a data processing company. It just so happens that the data that we process is music. And so it goes right back to what I was just talking about with the record store. So as I say, when I was the person putting the CDs on the shelf on a Sunday night, ready for sale on a Monday morning, because for anyone old enough to remember, in the UK, all music was for sale at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning. I would, close the shop on a Sunday, and then I would stay back, put those discs ready there for 9 a.m. the next day. And on a really busy week, there'd be maybe, 5, 6, maybe 10 CD singles at a push. And on a really quiet week, 2 or 3. Depending on the week. And that was it. That was new music. Like, whilst I was stacking the shelf, I could have listened to pretty much all of it in its entirety. And then, you look towards companies today, such as, Spotify, are very vocal about the fact they have 60,000 tracks being uploaded to their platform a day. And so that's really the challenge that we address, which is there is now not more music that comes out on a daily basis than used to come out in a whole year 10 years ago. So how does the industry cope? Because, music's doing a great job of making more money and figuring out how to monetize streaming and live where possible and merchandise opportunities. But physical retail was, a set price and a very easily quantifiable amount. So now that there is so much more music, and I do think it's fantastic that, pretty much anyone at home with a laptop can create and release music. I think that's a fantastic advancement in the technology. But how does the rest of the industry cope? How do streaming services know what they've got? How do record labels sort through the demos that get sent to them, which maybe used to be a couple of hundred and now is tens of thousands? How do sync companies who might want to say, oh, let's find a new theme tune for this fantastic Netflix show, but now they have to search through a database of 200,000 songs. How do you use artificial intelligence to create shortcuts and basically give tools to the people we have in the industry who are now coping with a much, much larger volume of content than they ever had to? So I actually was working for another music tech startup in Singapore, and I got invited to interview for a startup incubator called Entrepreneur First. Entrepreneur First, or EF, is an incubator based out of the UK originally, but they've got offices now in Toronto, Singapore, Bangalore, Paris, Berlin. What they do is they bring on individuals. So they don't look for sort of small companies to invest in. They look for individuals that they think have potential. So I'm what they call a domain expert. I've only ever worked in music, more specifically music tech. So, for over 10 years. So the chances of me being able to build something in this space are higher than the average person, their chances would be. And then my co-founder is deeply technical. He's been a developer for over 15 years. And so they invite people like he and I to join the program. And when I did it in 2018, there was 100 people in our cohort. And every person that shows up is open to starting a company. And really from there, you have a coffee with as many people as you can, you have a chat with as many people as you can, and you find someone that you think, yeah, let's try working on something. And so for me, that was myself and my co-founder, Aaron. He is a very, very deeply technical AI developer, and then my experience of the music industry. And using those forces combined is how we came up with the idea and how we decided to build Musiio.
Let's jump into the MVP. Let's jump into that first product you built. Tell me about, what sort of tools you used to bring it to life and how long it took you to build.
So obviously when the company first started, it was just the two of us in a sort of a co-working space that EF have in the middle of Singapore. It was me on the same 13-inch MacBook Air that I've had for the last 6 years, and I am speaking to you on right now, and my co-founder with a pretty nifty gaming laptop. It's a pretty high end, but he is on his third one. He does burn through the processors quite quickly, I think. Essentially, once we'd workshopped our idea and once we thought, essentially the initial thought was just, could you train an AI to listen to music? From that basis, we hadn't even thought about, industry pricing or monetization. We just thought, could an AI replicate some of the tasks that a human does while listening to music? So that was our first premise. And I remember the very first, we just used to sit opposite each other on our laptops, me sort of hitting up my industry friends on LinkedIn to see what they thought about this idea, and him sort of experimenting with some models. Some he'd previously built, some he built from scratch, and then just seeing what we could get. And I remember there was one day in particular, and I sort of said, hey, how's it going? What's an update? And my co-founder had managed to replicate exactly the Shazam technology. So he'd been able to teach an AI to find an identical track. And I was like, that's great, and that would have been cutting edge 15 years ago, but that's pretty standard now. So but interesting that you just hacked that together in a morning. That really shows sort of how fast tech does move. And I do remember really clearly, one of the first little mini projects or MVPs was we'd been working together for about 3 months. I'd got us access to about 200,000 tracks, which was part of the Free Music Archive, the FMA. And with that initial set of tracks, we were able to build a very, very early prototype where we would drop one track as like a seed track into the database, and we would just ask the AI to pull the most similar tracks, like based on the fingerprint. And I remember at the time, any model we had, the models we have now run in milliseconds, but back then I think we had to wait a whole 30 minutes to see the results. So I think we sort of set it running and went out for lunch, and when we came back, we found that we dropped in a Kurt Weill folk song as the seed track. The 10 tracks that it had pulled back as a playlist were fantastic. Stuff that I would never have found in that 200,000 song database, in a year of listening. And I was like, oh, wow, this really works. Like, that did something better than I could have done in a much, much shorter time. And so that was really our MVP. That was proof that, AI can be used to build a playlist, which is something that we've always considered quite a human behavior.
Well, when you're building any MVP or early prototype, right, you're having to make certain decisions and trade-offs as you make it. So tell me about some of those decisions and trade-offs, and how did you cope with them?
So I'm I'm thinking as well, from there, we kind of progressed into, a very sort of basic front end. Funnily enough, I feel like, I literally think my co-founder can do anything in the world, but the one thing he hates to do is front end development. He loves back end, scalability, AI. He cannot build something to look pretty for the life of him. So there was a lot of interesting choices around, how the thing's going to look in the very first instance. But there was other choices to make. So, for example, when we first started building the product, I was convinced that the search technology, aka using a fingerprint of an audio file to search hundreds of thousands of other fingerprints, was the revolutionary technology. I mean, it was like nothing I'd ever seen before. And I thought, wow, this could move the industry on by 10 years in one leap. But it turned out when we took it to the market, people were wowed by that technology, but they didn't want to buy it. It was almost a leap too far. And in fact, what people started to say to me was, oh, can it do tagging? Like, can you use that same fingerprint and as well as the search results, can it also say what genre the track is, what key the track is in, what BPM the track is in? And to be honest, my whole point was, if you use fingerprint search, you don't need those tags. We now have gone past the point where we need those words. A fingerprint can do much, much more than a single, just the word pop can do in terms of recognizing similarity. But I feel like back in 2018, when we started Musiio, the industry was not willing to let go of its tags. And not only was it not willing to let go, it certainly wasn't willing to take a risk on something that's something they'd spent a long time and a lot of years investing in. So really, search was actually our first product. And then from that, we reverse engineered the tags because people were not willing to buy the search without the tags. So that was a really interesting learning curve to me. At what point are you too early? At what point are you too late? And even if you have something that will bring the industry on 10 years in advancements in a very short time, if people have invested significant time and resources into another method, you're going to be very, very hard to pull them away from that method.
So you kind of hinted at product progression there as you were talking, but I'm curious, how you matured the product from there and how you went about building your roadmap of, okay, this is the next most important thing to build.
Roadmap one is a little bit easier in terms of, it's always been my ethos that we build the thing that people want to pay us for. And so, when you're very, very early, you're sort of thinking, what will people pay for? And you have to take a few gambles based on your industry knowledge about what that might be. But, the roadmap in 2021 is very much tied to what our biggest customers are interested in and where they see the industry going and where I see it going in collaboration with them. But I'm also thinking about when we very first started the company, as I say, going from search to reverse engineering tagging, there are lots of points at which you have to make a decision one way or the other. And another sort of almost misstep of mine is, I remember thinking what the first question out of any customer's mouth is, sounds great, does it work? Right? Because I've just sold them magic beans and it sounds fantastic and AI can do all of this stuff. First question they want to know is, sounds good, does it actually do the thing that you're saying? So I was like, great, we gotta have some kind of demo on the website where people can get some very, very quick proof of concept. And we were like, okay, let's throw up the tagging API. Let's have a way that people can test the API and they can find out that it works. And we'd gone through this whole plan and we were like, yeah. And, right at the point at which we were going to go live, I just said, guys, I feel terrible about this, but I need to go back to one of our sort of core insights, which is if you were to draw a Venn diagram of the overlap of music industry people who want our product, people who can code, the overlap is almost zero. The music industry is not a tech-savvy, developer-heavy industry. And so I just suddenly went, the people we're trying to prove this to are industry people. None of them can code. Right at the last minute, we pivoted to a code-free solution where people can just upload an MP3 and instantly get the tags back for that track. So we used our own API to build an interface. And so there are many, many occasions like this where you have to make the uncomfortable decision of saying, I've suddenly realized we're probably wrong. And I want to lay industry insight into this for the reason. In terms of how you guide a product, you have to go back to what you know about the industry and your core insights. And you also have to be sort of willing to question yourself and be wrong on many occasions.
Well, let's switch to team. So how did you go about building your team? And, I'm interested in what you looked for in those people to indicate that they were the winning horses to join you.
It differs slightly in the tech team and the sort of the music teams that we have at Musiio. When I met my co-founder, we realized he's Swedish, I'm British, we're a similar age, we've got a similar amount of years experience. His background is actually in gaming, whereas mine's in music, but we sort of very quickly developed a shorthand where, we were like, oh, this is great, we can work together quite easily. We sort of look at our dev team from a similar perspective, although I would say I have heard that my co-founder's code tests to join the team are quite difficult. He's got high standards, and I think it's because, we're not necessarily a SaaS company with a website and a payments page. We're building deep tech artificial intelligence, and, we really need the best of the best working with us. And I'm pleased to say via the code test and the interview processes, we really do have some fantastic developers, and they come from all over. We're all based in Singapore, but we have Russians, we have French, we have Indian, we have Singaporean, we have Swedish. It's full diversity. I don't think we double up almost anywhere. And then a slightly different approach when it comes to, say, the music and sales team. I just pulled very, very deeply from my existing network. And, I'm lucky enough that I had been working in Singapore for a few years already. I already knew a great commercial director. I knew a few of the industry people. I took a few shortcuts by, dipping back into my old network. Any advantage you can give yourself, any nice little shortcuts as a startup. And another one actually on the developer side and the sort of commercial side is we also dig right back into the EF network. So, Entrepreneur First has now had over 2,000 people do the program. Obviously not everyone starts a company, not everybody wants to. Some people do it and go, oh, this is not for me. So again, for us to be able to sort of reach out to a pre-qualified group of people who are super smart, most of them have PhDs, and be like, hey, who wants to join us on this? That's a very valuable network for us as well, especially from a dev perspective.
This episode is sponsored by Vanta. You're a startup founder. Finding product market fit is probably your number one priority. But to land bigger customers, you also need security compliance. And obtaining your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certification can open those big doors. But they take time and energy pulling you away from building and shipping. And that's where Vanta comes in. Vanta is the all-in-one compliance solution helping startups like yours get audit ready and build a strong security foundation quickly and painlessly. How, you ask? Vanta automates the manual security tasks that slow you down, helping you streamline your audit. And the platform connects you with trusted VCSOs to build your program, auditors to get you through audits quickly, and a marketplace for essentials like pen testing. Join over 8,000 companies, including many Y Combinator and Techstars startups who trust Vanta. Simplify compliance and get $1,000 off at vanta.com/codestory. That's VANTA.com/codestory. This episode is sponsored by Kinsta. Between juggling client meetings, managing your website, and keeping up with everyday tasks, who has the time to stress out about website security? Well, with Kinsta, the technical stuff is taken care of, so you can focus on what you do best. Kinsta provides managed hosting for WordPress, offering lightning-fast load times, top-tier security, and unmatched human-only customer support. Whether you're a business owner, web developer, or running a digital agency, Kinsta makes managing your website easy and efficient. Kinsta provides enterprise-grade security, being one of the few hosting providers for WordPress with SOC 2 and other certifications, guaranteeing the highest level of security for your website. Thanks to their unlimited free expert-led migrations, Kinsta ensures a smooth transition for you from other hosting providers. Customers have reported 200% faster load times post-migration to their platform. What I find cool about Kinsta is their fast and reliable customer service and premium features that are included at no extra cost. Ready to experience Kinsta's hosting for yourself? Get your first month free when you sign up at kinsta.com today. That's KINSTA.com. Let's talk about scalability. So in the technology, did you build this from day one to scale efficiently, or were you kind of fighting this as you grow?
So actually built to be scalable from day one. And that is in all credit to my co-founder, whether it's from experience or whether it's, a passion of his, both of which are true. He wanted to build this to be able to scale straight away. I think he understands the pain of having to go back and re-engineer an entire product based on a new customer. Although we are in an interesting scaling process at the minute, we've been able to process about 1 million audio files a day, and we're in the process of scaling up to about 5 million. But I do remember as well, there are many times as a developer where you have that choice. I remember whilst we were at Entrepreneur First, there was an advisor who worked there, really, really fun guy called Joe. Basically, when we told him our MVP, he was like, great, get it up and running by tomorrow. And, Aaron was like, it's going to take me 2 weeks. And he was like, 2 weeks? That's way too long, guys. Like, don't waste your time. Like, just throw something up there. Doesn't matter if it works. Doesn't matter if it's just an interface and there's nothing behind it. Just, get it up there. And, my co-founder was like, no, I'm absolutely not going to work that way. It's we're going to build it properly, and I would rather dedicate 2 weeks now than have some bullshit product that doesn't really work and then have to go and reverse engineer it in 2 months and take another 6 months. I would rather spend the 2 weeks now. I think that was a great sign for our relationship as well, because I just fully supported it. He's a very experienced developer. If he thinks this is the way to go, he's got my backing 100%. So yeah, even from month 3 of the company, not even incorporated yet, we were building for scalability.
Well, as you step out on the balcony and you look across all you've built, what are you most proud of?
There's a couple of things that stand out to me as like things that just give me an immense amount of joy. And they give me an immense amount of joy because we've built them. There's 2 things. There's one, which is, we have an office here in Singapore, and, especially during various lockdowns, when everyone was working from home, I just remember the first day that we were allowed back in, and there was you were allowed a limited number of people back in the office. And I remember just looking at the office going, oh, wow, we did this. We did enough business that we got an office. We've got people in it that work for us. We're a real company. This is the real deal. And every time I go to the office, I love the space so much that I just, it's nothing exciting. It's just a sort of a heritage shop house in Singapore, but it's ours, and that's an achievement. The second thing is and funnily, one of the funny things about Musiio is about 70% of my customers will not let me say who they are. They like to be very confidential. They probably like you to think that they were building the AI themselves. So it's hard that I can't often say the most exciting names that we're working with. But if you were to go to me 3 years ago when I was starting the company and told me the top 3 clients that I would be selling products to, I would have think you'd lost your mind. Like, I could never have imagined selling, technical solutions to some of the biggest and best music companies in the world. And so that is another thing that I'm incredibly proud of.
Well, let's flip the script a little bit. Tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
One mistake I made probably about 6 months ago, or at the end of last year. Obviously, as a growing business, we have a lot more customers coming on board. And I was like, we should hire a customer success person, which is not a mistake in terms of thought process. However, I made 2 mistakes. The first mistake was that I hired remotely, and we have not been a remote business to date. And it is kind of harder to be successful to skill up in a deep tech business while you're remote. So that was kind of one of the first mistakes I made. And that was kind of COVID related as well. This person would have relocated if they could have. And then the second mistake I made was that I currently do all of the customer success, and my idea was just that this person would report directly to me and they would learn everything by doing everything I do, and then eventually they would just take it over. The mistake there really is I shouldn't really have anyone else reporting to me at this stage. Like, I didn't have enough time to dedicate to this hire. I didn't have enough time to skill them up. And ultimately, they were not successful in the role. But I put almost all of that blame on myself and the decisions I made. That's difficult, but I always, I have a lot of personal ethoses around hiring. And, if you make a mistake, it's okay to kind of say to that person, I've made an error here. This isn't the right fit. I don't want to waste your time, and thank you for taking the chance with us. There's a right and a wrong way to treat people, even when you are the one who's made the wrong choices. So that's kind of probably the one that's most fresh in my mind, because I also feel a huge sense of responsibility for the people that work for me. And that's the part of being a founder that I find the hardest. A lot of people rely on you for their livelihood, for their monthly salary, and that's a big responsibility. And so when I make mistakes, it doesn't just affect me or some multi-million-dollar music company. It affects the people working for me. And so that was one problem where I'd made a huge mistake about 6 months ago. But I was very open with the rest of the team and explained it to them pretty much just as I have to you now, Noah.
Well, what does the future look like for your product and for your team?
We've got that roadmap on the go. We're building some exciting new features, some of which are requested, some of which will be a pleasant surprise. We're building out custom filters into our search dashboard. So music companies who have a lot of release information or a lot of artist percentage ownership information will be able to use that as specific filters, whilst also using our AI search. We also have a roadmap of the other tags that we want the AI to be able to identify. We currently do about 20 moods. We want to up it to about 50. And we're also thinking we might experimentally see if we can teach an AI to identify time signatures. And we're also working on some very early experimental technology called hit potential. So the idea that if you can train an AI on a historical database of music, is it also able to predict trends and identify the hits of the future? Lots of exciting things to come for 2021. I'm very excited.
Well, Hazel, let's switch to you for a moment. Who influences the way that you work? Name a CEO, CTO, architect, really any person. Name a person you look up to and why.
I do, and it's the naffest answer in the world, Noah. And sorry, naff is a very British term for not cool and a bit sort of, people are going to hear my answer and think, oh, what a loser. But this came up in conversation, and I suppose it comes from, growing up, I didn't know a lot of women in business. There's no history of entrepreneurism within my family. I didn't have a female boss maybe up until my late 20s. And so really when people ask where I got my inspiration from, it's from a TV character. So I'm currently on my 4th complete watch through of Star Trek Voyager. The person that I look to as probably my favorite example of women in leadership is Captain Catherine Janeway of the Starship Voyager, which again sounds crazy, and it's a little bit sad that that's the only answer that I can come up with. But I also hope to possibly maybe inspire a new generation as a real human being. But that's essentially the number one person that I look up to still.
We talked about mistakes, but a little bit different spin. If you could go back to the beginning, what would you do differently, or where would you consider taking a different approach?
Actually, I don't think I would maybe do anything particularly differently. I'm sort of very grateful to have got where I've gotten in work and in life, and I'm pretty happy with the outcome. And it's kind of the flap of a butterfly's wings. If I change one thing, I might not get to where I am today. So a bit of maybe an unusual answer, but I probably wouldn't change anything. Not so far. And actually, one of my favorite quote, because when I first started being a founder, I did find it particularly hard. And, one of the EF founders, a guy called Aaron, who's got a startup called Privia, he sort of, he's a sort of third time founder. He's done it quite a few times before. And, his quote, which, I don't think is super original, but he was like, when everything goes right, you don't learn anything. And that's so true, right? If everything, just like every single sale I made it, every single price everyone agreed to, then you would never learn how to do any of these things. So yeah, you've got to be grateful for the tough times as well. And I am.
Well, last question, Hazel. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world. They can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person having gone down this road a bit?
My first things would be, do you have a co-founder? This is a much easier journey to do with an equal. Do you have any investment? If I think the idea is really that amazing, can I get in with a discount nice and early on? And also, I guess my other thing would be, the thing I try to do is, can I make any introductions? So I remember one of the reasons I joined Entrepreneur First was I had absolutely no idea how you would raise money. I had never met an investor. I didn't know anyone who'd ever raised money. I didn't know anyone who was an investor. And to me, it just seemed like this insane world of like, oh, it's completely inaccessible. And actually, like most things, it can be navigated. But you do need someone to give you the first rung on the ladder. So if I can also be the first rung on a ladder for, future entrepreneurs, then that would be the role that I would like to take in that situation.
Well, Hazel, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for telling the creation story of Musiio.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Noah.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. Support the show on patreon.com/codestory for just $5 to $10 a month. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.